The rest of you who have joined in, please just let us know where you're listening from today, and any other information you'd like to share with us. Cool. Well, people usually spill in over the first 15 minutes, but I'll make some introductions so we can get underway with the call. Submitting this person that's just waiting, and then I'll say some words once this John's guy's in. Great. So welcome, everyone. Today we have a very exciting talk on SEO, or search engine optimization. And for those of you who aren't already familiar with that, SEO is this really important topic in the tech world today. It's all about making your company more searchable online so that you appear at the top of search results in your domain. And this is very important. Up to 75% of all traffic ends up going to the first 3 search results, for example. And as I'm sure we all know, hardly anybody ever looks at the second page. So moving your site onto the first page, or even just up a few positions on the first page, can translate to a lot more traffic to your site, which means a lot more revenue and a lot more success. Our speaker today is Felix Norton. He's the founder of Woww, which is a leading digital agency in Cape Town, and he's also, coincidentally, my brother. Felix has almost a decade of experience in the web design space, and he's worked with dozens of clients in his time. So he is actually a pro at SEO, and I know you'll learn a lot from him today. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Felix. Hi.
Hey everybody, please let me know if the mic check works, and if I cut out at any time, just give me a heads up so we can avoid the awkward, oh sorry, I was muted for 10 minutes while giving a talk. So for today, I want to give a little crash course in understanding the importance of SEO as developers, because it's something that I have found that a lot of developers don't always take into consideration when they build for the web. And I want to try and plant that seed now, so as you guys go out into the wild, that you kind of always have this thought lingering in the back of your heads. So first off, a little bit about me. My name is Felix Norton. I am a former UCT ComSci student, way back in 2013. I kind of left the developer route and transitioned more into kind of an entrepreneur and a marketing role. And over the last 8 years, I've started a custom app development company. I tried to create a startup that used machine learning to create art. I had a brief stint with crypto mining when that was all the craze. I started and still run a moderately successful digital agency. I've built and run a number of e-commerce stores. And I'm currently starting a series of online courses to essentially teach what I've learned over the years. So my primary current focus at my digital agency is search engine marketing. And I'll kind of unpack that now. So at my agency, Woww, we believe in this concept of holistic web design, or having a holistic presence. And only when you kind of have everything in check do you succeed online. But for today, we're going to just focus on this one area of search engine optimization. So the key talking points that we're going to cover is what is SEO, why it's important, how it works, and how we can affect SEO as developers. And I'm going to give a couple examples of what can go wrong when you don't take it into consideration. So what is SEO? Well, when you go to a search engine like Google and you type in a keyword, you get results. And those results can be either paid or organic. But SEO is the practice of getting targeted traffic to a website from a search engine's organic rankings. So we're dealing with this second part here, below the ads. PPC is the part that happens above there, pay-per-click marketing. But SEO is essentially, they both fall under the broader category of search engine marketing because they both manipulate the search engine. So why is SEO important? Well, if we look kind of at some statistics, what we can see is that if we look at where traffic comes from on the internet, 60% of all traffic comes from Google. And then very little traffic, less than, I think, about 6% comes from Facebook, then YouTube. YouTube's also a search engine, Yahoo, Bing, Reddit, and it just kind of whittles down. So if you group all the search engines together, you take Google, Yahoo, Bing, YouTube, SEO or search engines account for 70% of web traffic. And that's huge. So it's certainly not to be underestimated. But another way to look at the importance of SEO is to calculate the value with a real life example. And if you take an e-commerce site, that's actually quite easy. And so let's break that down. So let's say you have a website, right? And you're going to sell some expensive water bottles. And let's say that so somebody goes into Google and they type in buy water bottles online or buy glass water bottle, and you rank in position 7 for that term. Okay. Well, let's say you have a click-through rate at position 7 of around 3%. And that's what we tend to find. If you look at the statistics of average click-through rates, position 7 garners on average 3% of the clicks. And let's assume that you have a conversion rate of about 3% as well. 3% is generally a good conversion rate for a decent website. It's not great, it's not terrible, it's just average. And let's say we're charging $100 for our water bottle. And let's say on average, there's maybe about 10,000 searches for this product a month. Okay. So what we can do is we can take this and get a very simple formula. It's literally just multiplying all the values. And all of a sudden you get $900. So if you're selling a water bottle for $100, you're going to probably make about 9 sales a month with these variables. Now, let's see what happens if we take the same formula, we change a single variable. We're only going to change the ranking position, okay? So you're at number 7, and let's say you jump up to position 6. All of a sudden, you make an extra 4 sales, a 33% increase in revenue per month. That's not bad. And then you get up to position 5. All of a sudden, you're nearly doubling your money. Position 4. And it very quickly scales all the way up to position 1, where you're making 10x your revenue per month. And that's quite significant when you take into account maybe an e-commerce site that has not just one product, but hundreds of products. Right? So let's go and we take a client of mine, okay? So this client, Skoon, they sell online skincare products. And they had a sister company called Faithful to Nature, which sell a broader range of health-related products, from food to medicinal marijuana. They sell everything. And they were ranking for Skoon's products at position 1 to 2, whereas Skoon was on average ranking in position 5 to 7 for their own products. And so they approached us and they said, well, this is kind of lame. You know, we're getting undercut by our sister company who are adding a margin to all of our sales. So we said, okay, well, let's see if we can, you know, do some SEO. So that's exactly what we did. And what you can see here is that we spent about a month optimizing all the products in the site and doing good SEO. And what we saw is that we were able to improve the average positions for about 45 of their money terms and their money products to position 1 to 3 and take out Faithful to Nature. And this is when we implemented the changes. And then this graph here shows you the revenue over time. So subsequently, as the rankings improved, they had a 400% increase in revenue in just 2 months. And now they are absolutely cooking because we've done even greater optimizations. So being in these top positions equals more money, which makes everyone happy. And there you can see now Faithful to Nature ranks slightly lower for their branded products. But one does not simply just rank #1 in Google. That's always the question. People come to me and they say, yeah, how do I just, you know, how do I get to the top of Google? And it's not that simple. So to maybe understand how to get to the top of Google, what we want to do is understand, what does Google try to do? And what Google wants to do is wants to make you happy. And it does this by giving you exactly what you want, by serving you the best possible result for a given query. So how does Google do that? Well, it looks at 2 primary factors, and these are going to be the 2 key terms. Yeah?
Sorry for interrupting. Your slides are not showing. I'm not sure if everybody can see all your slides, because I'm just seeing the first slide.
Oh, really?
I can see all the slides. Maybe in the chat, just mention in the chat if you can see all the slides.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Looks like people are seeing the slides.
Okay, Martin, maybe then just refresh the Zoom yourself and see if you can follow it all.
Cool.
Okay, so no, it seems like we're good then. All right.
Okay, cool. All right. So Google looks at 2 primary factors, and this is the kind of the broad terms that I'm going to throw around a lot, which is relevancy and authority. Okay. So what is relevancy? Okay. So relevancy is how relevant is a given document, for example, a web page, is to the search query. So what the search engine does is it tries to use clues to understand how relevant a page is to match it to a relevant query. So we'll look at the page title, the URL, the meta description, the heading structure, the keywords, the images, the anchor text, link content, language, schema markup, etc., etc., etc. Google looks at about over 200 relevancy factors. And they're not all weighted equally. Some are weighted more heavily than others, but there's a lot that affects how relevant a document is. But now, let's take, for example, we go and we search for something like cookie recipes, right? We get 349 million results, which are all potentially relevant. So what do you do when you've got lots of relevant answers for a question? How do you know which result to show? Well, I don't know if any of you guys, so we look at something called authority. So this is Google's way of determining if the content is likely to be accurate and trustworthy. And it's the primary method, and the primary method of evaluating authority is by looking at the number of links to a relevant document. So I don't know if anybody's read this paper here. It was published by these guys called Sergey Brin and Larry Page. They founded Google, and they came up with this algorithm, or this paper, that spoke about how to judge the authority of a page based on the number of links that link to a page. So if you have more backlinks than another relevant document to your document is going to rank higher. It's not the only authority attribute, but it's one of the primary ones. And Google keeps trying to tell us that, no, they don't look at backlinks so much anymore, but it's a lie. And I can show you with evidence. Here is my site, okay? And at the top here, we have the number of referring domains over time. And down here, we have the organic traffic. And on my website, we've barely made any changes to our website over this period. The only variable that we have changed is the number of backlinks that have grown, the number of referring domains. And as you can see, more backlinks, more traffic. It's definitely one of the key factors. Okay, so how do search engines work on a more technical level, all right? And this is where we can kind of get into the nitty-gritty as developers. So a search engine in general focuses on three primary tasks: crawling, which is going out into the internet and finding web pages, then taking those web pages and adding them to an index, and then sorting and ranking those documents or those web pages. So here's a kind of a Google's exact simplified pipeline. And you can see here, this kind of very closely matches. You've got the crawler, you've got the indexing component, and the ranking or query component. It's obviously a little bit more advanced, but it still has these three primary tasks that it performs. And now, when we audit a site for SEO, we want to see like how good, and we want to measure how well a site is optimized for SEO. We examine three key areas. So we look at technology, what it's built with, how it's built, how it's structured. We look at the relevancy. So I spelled that wrong. And then we also look at the authority. And what we see is that, and this pattern that we've observed, is that the technology that we use tends to affect the crawler. The relevancy factors tend to affect the indexer component, and the authority tends to affect the ranking component. And then you have this other part where everything kind of overlaps, but I really want to kind of maybe just focus on a couple key things where we've looked at technology and the crawler and relevancy and the indexer, because that's what we as developers are most likely going to affect. Authority, that tends to be marketing's side of things, and content creation. Whereas as developers, we have a firmer grasp on the technology and relevancy components, and therefore can affect the crawler and the indexer. So that was the wrong slide. Okay, so let's look at some examples of how this might play out, right? So how the Googlebot, which is the crawling component of Google, works with site speed, okay? So back in 2010, Google announced that they were taking site speed as a ranking factor. And let's unpack that a little bit, right? So here's my site, okay? So I use a tool called GTmetrix. It's really great if you're ever trying to figure out and understand how your web pages or anything that you build is being perceived by users on the internet. You can come look at this tool, and it gives you a very powerful breakdown of what's slowing down the site and how it's giving you a score. Versus now a badly done site, which is loading in 8 seconds. It's got 169 requests, and it's just a sluggish site. It's offering a pretty awful user experience. And the reason why is because the developers of the site kept on adding tons of snippets of JavaScript for Facebook tracking pixels and tracking pixels for everything. So they've got Google Analytics, they've got Google AdSense, they've got Instagram, they've got Twitter. They are tracking a whole bunch of other things and then also trying to serve you ads, and it's all loading at the same time, and it just slows down the web page by an incredible amount. And as developers, one of the ways that we can control site speed is by just building a website for speed in mind. So by controlling the image sizes, I mean, put it this way, a lot of common mistakes that I see on websites is that people will just plonk a 5 meg image for their main section on their landing page. And that image could be compressed and resized to 50 kilobytes. It doesn't need to be that size. I mean, Doom, you could fit the whole of the original Doom game on less than like 2.5 megs. You can affect things like the physical server location. So picking, say you're deploying your website on AWS, picking the right region to match your user, where they're browsing from, using a CDN. So if you are going to host in the US, but you're going to have users across the world, utilize a content delivery network, which will distribute the content so that users in different countries can access a local version of that site. Compression and minification of your code. So just, making the package that you serve to the user as small as possible, and just writing quality and efficient code. So let's see how this now might affect the crawler, right? So what we see here, and I've got these kind of two graphs here. In the top graph, what we're seeing is the number of pages that is being crawled per day. And in the bottom graph, we're seeing the time spent downloading a page. And what you observe is that over here, this website was loading in about 2 seconds. And then they optimized and made some tweaks to the site to improve its performance so that the average page load time went down to about 500 milliseconds. And what do you see? At the same time as this optimization was done, the amount of pages that crawled per day tripled. And why does this happen? Well, basically Google has a quota per day of how much compute time it can spend searching through, analyzing and indexing a site. And if you make that time shorter, Google can crawl more. So if you decrease the amount of time it needs to crawl, it can increase the amount of pages that it can view. And the more pages it can view and crawl and index, the more time it has to understand it and therefore rank it and index it. And you can see here a graph of the kind of the visibility of the site over time, as once we've implemented the page speed performance, the visibility goes up. And that's just Google rewarding you for having a thing. In addition to helping Google's other primary goal, which is to make users happy. So if you have a site that loads faster, users are going to have a better time. And that's another signal that Google can measure and see that, people like using this site. So this is maybe a better site. Let's rank it more. All right. Let's look at another way that developers can affect the crawler. And this is using Geo Redirects, for example. So we have this German website that has both content in English and German. And this is an old case study, but essentially the website had an old domain. It was dw-world.de, and then they changed over to dw.de. And then they launched a new website in 2015, dw.com. And they redirected all of the traffic to this new domain. And on the launch date, something went very wrong. All of a sudden, all of the traffic just disappeared overnight. 70% of traffic just gone. Why? Well, what happened is when they launched the site, they said, okay, cool. If somebody is coming from Germany, let's look at their IP address and redirect them to the German component of the site. And if they're coming from an English or American address, let's direct them to the English side of the site. And if you read Google's documentation, what we can find is that the Google bot is American. So what was happening was the bot was unable to access any of the German content because the Google bot was coming from an American IP address. So it automatically got shunted into the English side of the site and was never allowed to crawl and therefore index and rank the German component. And because it's a German website, the majority of the traffic just disappeared overnight because nobody could find search results, nobody could find articles online. The only way that a visitor could access the site was going direct, not through finding the content via Google. And because we know that the majority of traffic comes from Google and not direct, you can see why not having the content being indexed was a bad thing. So they made a small tweak to the code. They just said, allow the Google bot to access the German pages, don't redirect if it's a bot. And all of a sudden, almost overnight, all the traffic returned. Happy days. Cool. So let's now look at how, as developers, we could potentially affect the indexing component. Okay. So here's a little snippet of code. And what we're looking at here is something called an href lang tag. And that's just a little clue that we can add in the markup of our website to tell Google that we have different versions of the site available in different languages and how to read that. And in the code, we had this little snippet of JavaScript, which did a thing. And this little bit of JavaScript was above the href lang tags. And when we tried to look at the site, we could see that Google was saying, no, there's no href lang tags. But we could very clearly see it's here. So what's going on? Why is Google not seeing that? Well, let's go back to the indexer. And the indexer is actually broken up into two stages. The first stage is literally looking at the raw HTML. It goes, cool, take the HTML, have a quick look through, and then what it does is it actually renders it. So it actually converts it. It uses, I think, an old version of Chrome, and it actually turns the HTML into a web page to see what it would render and what it would look like to a person. And what was happening was that this JavaScript here, if we kind of unpacked that JavaScript code, it included an iframe. And there's this weird interaction with iframes where the iframe, so basically where the iframe is expected by Google to be in the body of a page. So if we go back to the code here, this iframe should only be here. It shouldn't be up here. But because it's being rendered in the JavaScript, Google gets confused. So when it sees an iframe in the head, it assumes that the head is ended and that the body has begun. So what's happening is that any code from here onwards is not being, any code after here isn't going to be addressed because it thinks that the body is actually up here. And a quick So something like an href lang tag only works when they're in the header of a page. Google doesn't, it ignores it if it's not in the header of the page. So quick little change, just swap the JavaScript and the href lang tags around. And all of a sudden Google's like, yay, I can see the href lang tags. And that's a small little tweak that just moving the code, one or two things around, you can have quite a significant effect. And then let's look at something like structured data. So I built an e-commerce website called Smart Speakers. It was a proof of concept little project that I wanted to see if I could build and rank an online store and take a lot. By going for relevancy over authority, because there's no ways that I can come in and take a lot, but I can build a hyper relevant site. So what I did was I built the site and the site did so well that my supplier bought me out. They said, look, we can't compete with you. You're taking away like you're adding markup that we could keep. So they was like, we're going to build our own site. And I said, well, no, that's lame. We don't want to hassle with the handle of logistics and running a physical store. Buy the site from us. And everyone was happy with that deal until something went wrong. So this is the traffic of the site over time. And this is when we sold the site, and kind of almost straight after we sold the site, the traffic started to tank. So the client or the buyer of the site phoned me up and they go, hey, Felix, I think you've sold us a dud. We're really unhappy about this. You know, what the hell's going on? So I did a little audit, and when we had sold the site to this business, this is what a product looked like on the site. It was, it had all the relevant content. It was beautifully marked up. It had all the relevant information. And when we sold the site to them, this is what they started publishing. They started publishing products that looked like this: a bland generic title, a price, and an add to cart button. And that's it. Compared to our products, which had all the things and all the clues that Google wanted. And Google gives us, it tells us what it wants. It says, add this markup so we can better understand what we're looking at. And when you do that, you know, you add the correct page markup, we can see all these things, and Google rewards you by adding that into the search results. And your products look better. They have like conversion optimized text. Google's happy because it can understand what a buyer might want. And also you're giving the buyer a better user experience, which again aligns with what Google wants to do, which is give the user the best possible experience to make them happy. So if we have good looking products instead of just this, and as we go back to the graph, after we told them how to correct for this, you can see how the site has just regained its feet and has continued to grow, because now they're actually implementing proper on-page markup, and they're not adding these kind of really ugly, just bland, empty products. One thing to also kind of talk about with Google is that Google is getting more intelligent and better at understanding human intent. And we had a client who used to, they used to rent furniture. And when we were brought onto the project, they were getting really frustrated that they weren't ranking for the terms that they wanted. And what we observed is that this website was about hiring furniture, not buying furniture. And there's a very clear distinction in a user search between black plastic chair or hire or rent a black plastic chair. And so by optimizing the page for that correct intent, we cut out this irrelevant traffic because we don't want people that want to buy chairs. We only optimize for people who want to hire chairs. And all of a sudden, Google goes, okay, cool. We're giving the correct, most relevant result to the user. So we're going to reward you for that specific search, and we're not going to send irrelevant traffic for people who want to buy chairs. Happy days. The site, we grew their revenue by 20x in 6 months. It was insane. Another thing that you can do for adding schema is you can add cool things like reviews and ratings, which helps let somebody at a glance see what they might be clicking through to. And this is a great feature to add. However, and it's very easy to add, right? You just add this little bit of markup to your page, and you give it a number, and you can see, you know, how it ranks. However, this can also be hyper dangerous. So here's a site where they were getting about 160,000 visitors a month, and the traffic value was estimated at about $750,000, so about 10 million rand. And they added this review markup. However, what they'd done though is that it was fake. It was a lie. Like, this wasn't a real markup submitted by real reviews. And Google's gotten to a point where it can tell what is a genuine user submitted review and what is you just adding markup to your page to try and get a rich snippet result. And what happened? The site was flagged by Google as having spammy structured markup and was then penalized, and they just haven't been able to recover. Even though they've removed the schema markup, Google, what happened is that other competitors came in while they were down and have just taken those search results, and Google doesn't trust the site anymore. So yeah, it's very scary, the things that you can do when you don't understand what you're doing. So basically, what have we learned? So what is SEO? SEO is the optimization of websites to acquire organic search traffic from search engines. Why is it important? Well, 70% of traffic comes from search engines, and traffic equals users, which equals visitors, which equals money. How it works? Well, we've got 3 kind of focus areas: technology, relevancy, and authority, which affect the crawling, the indexing, and the ranking of the Google algorithm. And as developers, we can impact this. So it's important to understand how search engines work and how Google works specifically, because Google has 60% of all the traffic. Small changes in your site can have dire consequences. And that it's just important to take robots and not just humans into consideration when building for the web. And that's the kind of the key takeaway that I can impart upon anybody wanting to become a full stack web developer, is to not only just think about what you're building for humans. Take Google into consideration, because Google is how you get the humans. So you want to give humans great user experiences, but you've also got to ensure that Google can find your site through the crawling. It can understand your site through the relevancy, and that you build a great and authoritative site by having authority. And that's how you will succeed online with SEO. Question time.
You guys can either unmute yourself and ask a question, or if you're shy, you can ask in the chat. Also, if you don't have any questions at the moment, we'll be taking questions at the end again. So think of them when they come through, and then you can just type it in the chat or wait until then. But if there are no questions, oh, there's a raised hand from Naledi. Okay. Naledi, do you want to ask with voice?
Yeah, I'll ask with voice. I just wanted you to kind of elaborate on what a backlink is.
Okay. A backlink is really straightforward. It's any link from another source to your website. So I write an article, and in the article I link to another website. I'm giving a backlink to that website. I'm linking to that website. And what I'm doing when I'm linking to that site is I'm giving street cred from my site and kind of passing that street cred over to that other site. So essentially what I can show you here
So Felix, would backlinks add to the relevancy metric?
So backlinks aren't adding to the relevancy metric. Backlinks are adding to the authority metric.
Oh, sorry, you're right.
So if I if I go back to, and if you actually read the paper published by Google, their whole initial algorithm, what separated Google from other search engines was that they used backlinks, or what they called PageRank, as a factor in sorting and ranking results. So they would go and they would say, well, we've got 10 relevant pieces of content. How do we know which piece of content is the most relevant? We look at the one that has the most backlinks. And
okay.
And that's what
if there are lots of paths going to the site, lots of avenues, the bot infers that there's obviously some importance to the site because so many people are
the trick about backlinks is that, so like backlinks can be an entire topic on its own. I can talk about backlinks for hours, but let me show you some backlinks here, right? So this is a tool that we use. People can still see my screen, right?
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, so you can see I'm on Ahrefs. Is that correct?
Yes.
Or am I still on the slides?
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay. Okay, cool. So essentially what's happening is like, this is a tool called Ahrefs. It's a premium tool. You pay about $8 grand a month to use it. And what I can do here is I can go to this link here and I can see the number of backlinks that my website has. I have almost 19,000 backlinks and 202 unique referring domains. And if I go look at these backlinks over here, I can see all the different backlinks from all the different websites that I get. So I got a backlink, and because we're a digital agency, one of our cheap ways of getting backlinks is by adding a little footer link saying, you know, website by Woww, web design by Woww. But what we really want to do is we want to get backlinks from other high authority sites. So for example, if we're getting a backlink from Forbes.com, which has millions of backlinks, if we get an article on that site and that article links to our website, they're going to almost share some of their authority to us. So it's not only about just quantity of backlinks, it's actually also about the quality of the backlinks.
Okay, so you can't hack away by creating loads and loads of dummy sites with backlinks to your site.
And that used to be a thing in the past, right? So Google is getting smarter and smarter over time, and it's moving away from backlinks as a primary ranking factor. So initially it was the only ranking factor, but now it's only a factor of 200. So, but it's still like, even though Google keeps telling us, no, backlinks aren't so important, don't worry about backlinks, backlinks still work. So that's why we say you can focus on relevancy, which is creating really good content, and you can focus on authority, which is getting backlinks and building up like the street cred of your site. And it's the combination of both having good relevancy factors and good authority factors, which is how, so if I go to one of the examples here, if I go to Smart Speakers was a brand new website. It had no authority, it had no backlinks, but we were able to launch a new site. And by being hyper-focused in that we were only having a particular type of product, we were able to outrank a more authoritative site by being more relevant. But if another site that had the same relevancy but more authority came into the market, they would take us out. So that's why you want to always have a combination and focus on being the most relevant site possible and then growing your authority.
Cool. So we've got a question in the chat from Jonathan DeCock, and we've also got a raised hand, I think, from Duncan. So can you guys ask your questions? Well, you can read Jonathan's one in the chat.
You're going to have to excuse my boomer Zoom. Where is chat?
Okay, don't worry.
Chat.
I've got
I've got it here.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so do backlinks count for social media platforms? No. So interesting things about backlinks is that you have in a link, you have parameters. So you have these like href. So let's see if I can find, okay. If you look, let me do this. Let me go to my site. Okay. And if I take a link, okay, so I'm gonna inspect. Wait, can you see me inspecting stuff?
Yes,
Does it
yes.
show? Okay. So if you go look at the source code for a link, right? We've got an Ahref, and here we've got extra parameters that we can look at. There's a parameter that you can add in there called a do follow or a no follow. And what social media platforms do is they add all of their links are no follows, which means they do not pass PageRank over. And therefore social media backlinks don't count as backlinks, but there is a potential hidden factor. And that's the thing about SEOs, is that we don't actually have a clear-cut explanation of how the algorithm works. As a community, the whole search engine optimization community are actively trying to reverse engineer Google, but they don't actually know what's cooking under the hood. So they can just kind of see what's correlated with what works. And what we see over the time is that backlinks do affect ranking and social links don't. And it's because of the no follow attribute in those links. Otherwise, basically what would happen is that like all of, the other reason is that, okay, cool. So the other reason is that social platforms don't want to be crawled by Google. You don't want every possible, so if you go on to Facebook and you go to a specific page, you don't want every possible URL to be crawled and indexed on Google. And Google doesn't want that either, because they don't want to have to index the billion pages within Facebook. So by that nature, Google doesn't crawl Facebook and therefore doesn't look at the links coming from Facebook as much. It indexes certain pages, I think like public profile pages and community pages, but a lot of the internal stuff doesn't get indexed. And because it doesn't get indexed, it also doesn't, those links aren't tracked and measured by Google. I hope that answers that question.
Awesome, yeah, thanks, Felix.
Yeah, so to answer that question about React.js, so in the SEO community, JavaScript is the devil. Pretty much like React and JavaScript tends to make SEO really difficult. And what you want to just ensure if you're going to be building a site is that your site can be crawled and that the content is able to be rendered by the Google bot. And when it's rendered, that it's rendering the ultimate version of a page. And that'll help you to have a thing. So what you don't like, what's gonna not get indexed is maybe like a progressive web app. And Google has, I don't think Google have really figured out how to like index progressive web apps, because the output isn't defined, right? So you need a defined output for it to take, analyze, and index a page. So what you'll often find is that with platforms that are built with like React.js or something, what they'll do is the main platform won't get indexed, but they'll have a separate blog which is built on maybe a different platform or with like more of a raw HTML output. And that can be analyzed by Google, and that's how you get your traffic. And a key example I'll use is someone like Yoko, right? So yoko.co.za, they have this website here, and their blog is actually, so this website is all developed on one platform, but the content that they want to rank and their blog is actually WordPress, and that's sitting on a separate website. So it's actually a completely different website. And this is how they will try and drive traffic. So what they'll do is they'll create a nice blog post with WordPress, which is super SEO friendly. And you know, here's, for example, here's an article that I wrote for Yoko, like how to get your website to the top of Google. And this can get published, and this can then rank.
Excellent.
Okay, how can you become part of the SEO community? So SEO is not huge in South Africa. It tends to be more of an international community. And SEO is like a bit of a rabbit hole. But generally, like if you're wanting to like really get into SEO and understand the principles of SEO, there's a guy called Brian Dean, and he's the founder of like a blog called Backlink. And Backlink is probably one of the best resources on SEO. And he does this weird thing where like you can't really access his.
Sorry, Felix, I think you've gone silent.
Can you hear me still?
Now I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, so he games the algorithm. And so what you can do is SEO Hub. What you want to do is maybe come to something like this, this content hub here. And here is all of the basic questions and amazing guides that really help you to understand all the components of SEO. And it's a great initial starting point into SEO. And then if you want to get more involved in the community, you can join, there are a lot of Facebook groups. There's one called the search, what I'll do is I'll make some notes and I'll send it to Jonathan, and he can put it in like a follow-up talk, and I'll link to some places that you can join the community. Let me look at some of the other questions.
I think that's all of them for now. Do you have there's a next section to the talk, right?
Sorry?
I was wondering, did you have that kind of next section to the talk on examples?
No, those were the examples.
Oh, seriously? Wow, you fit into a very, very tight talk.
Yeah, no. So that's, yeah, essentially, yeah, I blitzed through it a lot faster than I thought I would. We went through 84 slides. What I can do is like, look, SEO is a huge and a broad topic, and I only wanted to highlight and touch on a couple of things without overwhelming people. But yeah, essentially, I'm more than happy to answer as many questions about the different components that people might have. Or to even like go through and elaborate on any of the talking points that I might have touched on.
Yeah, that's a good idea. If anybody has any specific questions as to sections we've gone through that maybe they thought were rushed over, then this is the perfect time to revisit those. And I just think personally, if you can maybe talk about some of those kind of, case studies where things went disastrously wrong again, that might kind of nail it in.
Yeah,
what
look,
we should and shouldn't do.
So SEO is what I tried to highlight is that with SEO you're beholden to the Google gods. So you have to be very conscious and very aware of what Google is doing and how Google changes things. To maybe also elaborate on that site that absolutely tanked, right? So here's another example of a website that got screwed over by Google. Well, that's perfect timing. Let's see. Okay. What I'll do is I'll just talk about it. But imagine there was a site that was doing really well and getting a ton of traffic. And then one day, all of a sudden, the traffic just stopped out of nowhere. And the reason that we identified why the site lost all of its traffic seemingly overnight with no changes to the code base or to the content of the site was that Google released an update to its algorithm. And Google does this a lot. Google essentially will come along and every couple months release a significant update. They release small updates almost weekly, but significant updates to the algorithm occur a couple times a year. And there was this one update that completely kind of threw the SEO world on its head, which was an update called the Medic or dubbed the Medic update by the community. And the reason it's called the Medic update was that it affected websites that are related to health, or so any kind of like doctor's website or anything that could affect your health, your money, or your life. So insurance, finance, gambling, and health were the types of websites that were affected. And what happened is that the website was of a doctor called Adrian Morris, and he was an allergy specialist. Oopsie, wrong one. Allergy clinic. Let's just do this way. So this is his South African version of his site, but he also had a UK version of the site. And what happened was the UK version of the site was getting about 40,000 visits a month, and he was going great. And all of a sudden the traffic disappeared overnight. And what happened was he was hit by the Medic update. And the Medic update had certain parameters that it wanted to be satisfied in order to rank a site. And what was happening is that his site, he had a lot of blog content about allergies and things. And he was getting a lot of traffic for that because people would type in, I don't know, peanut allergy, and they would get all of the traffic and would be super happy. Like coming to his blog and reading it. But the problem is that Google his website didn't have the new trust factors that it wanted from a website. And because it didn't have those trust factors and those authority factors, what it did is it took all the traffic that was, because he had relevancy, and it took it and it gave it to WebMD. So WebMD stole all of his traffic overnight. So what did we do? Well, we couldn't recover his traffic because there was no way to get the authority of his site back up. But what we did was we changed the intent of his site, and we changed the on-page markup to be focused less around being information about allergies and about being the active component, which was getting tested for allergies or seeing an allergy specialist. And that was something that Google was happy.
Might just be me, but I think you've cut out again, Felix. Felix, we can't hear you. Maybe, yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there. Okay, he's just coming back in. In the meantime, everyone, I've posted a link to a feedback form. It's just feedback about the event, and your inputs are obviously very valuable, so please fill that when you get a chance. Cool, Felix, you're back in. We made you co-host again. Don't know what happened there. Now you just need to unmute again.
Hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, so where did I get cut off?
I'm not entirely sure, actually. But I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
First thing is just justifying your use of WordPress, which I think you use with a lot of your clients. Just maybe you can tell us a bit about why WordPress is so SEO friendly, and then secondly, just if there are any kind of experiences with clients that stand out over yours, where there's been a simple hack that has really changed their business around, or things that they were doing really terribly before you came along.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Yeah. So the reason why we use WordPress is it's a really well-built and standardized platform that has a lot of support for SEO. It's also a platform that has been built for the digestion of content in mind. And because Google analyzes content, Google has a really easy time of crawling, indexing, and therefore ranking WordPress content. So by the nature of how the technology is built and the way the framework is structured, Google just likes viewing WordPress and can read it really easily. And that's why it's so easy to do SEO on that platform. It's also a platform that a lot of SEO people are not developers. And that's a key thing. So like in the SEO community, most of them are marketers. They are non-technical people that become a little bit technical, but they don't know how to develop. So they go look at code and they go, I don't know what's going on. So I'm kind of like this unique position where I have a programming background, but I'm actually a marketer. So I understand maybe some of the more advanced technical intricacies of how Google might work, and I can like scrap together some code when I need to, but I barely code anymore. And that's the majority of SEO people. So that's why I wanted to have this talk today, is that there's this kind of disconnect between the two communities where developers are focused on just building, technology, but they're not taking the marketing component into account. And when there's alignment between the marketing side and development side, that's when a site succeeds. Then to the second question was a quick hack. Quick hack, or the most important things that you can just do to improve a site is make it fast, make it secure, so add SSL, and ensure that you have the correct on-page clues to give Google context about what it's looking at. And I'll give you a prime example, a plumbing site. So a plumbing site is like the most basic 5-page website you could ever do. And if you build a landing page, your landing page is called home. Home of what, right? Google doesn't, home is just a useless word. Add context, say Cape Town plumbers, or Cape Town plumbing and geyser repairs. That's your homepage title. And Google can understand that. What it can't understand is home. Home means nothing. So the hack, and by just changing those little clues and giving Google the ability to better understand what it's looking at, it's going to reward you by indexing you. And that's how you get traffic.
Okay, lovely. There's another question, which I think you're in a great position to answer. For e-commerce websites, what platforms do you recommend for SEO friendliness? This is from somebody in the chat.
So I build all of my e-commerce websites on Woocommerce, which is an extension of WordPress. I'm actually giving another talk next week. If you want to book in for that, where I'm talking about WooCommerce versus Shopify. And one of my key points of my argument is why WooCommerce is great for Shopify. So why WooCommerce is great for SEO and why that's an advantage over Shopify. So yeah, in terms of like your options, you can use whatever you want, but essentially I think it's going to come down to every platform is great if you just know how to execute it properly and implement best on-page practices. But if you want an easier time for SEO, go with Woo. It's a great platform. And I'm actually launching a course in the next 2 weeks in collaboration with Yoko to show how to start, build, and so to build, grow, and scale a e-commerce website. So you can keep an eye out for that, and I'll also let Jonathan. I'll send out some discount codes for you guys if anybody wants to check that out.
So I just have a personal question here, and yeah, just excuse my ignorance if there is any. So you said that SEO. Well, SEO is great for content that for websites that show content. So like blogs that can have backlinks and other things linking to it. That's wonderful. But for like a simple e-commerce site where you're just selling 1 or 2 products online, how then do you implement successful SEO? Is that left to something like WooCommerce to do for you, or
no?
Between like a blog and
that's the thing, right? So if you want to build a site and you only want it to be a transactional platform, i.e., you can have a site and you can let people buy stuff from you, then just building a site with no SEO in mind is fine. But if you want to drive traffic and you want to drive traffic organically, you need to use SEO. You can use other strategies, like you can use paid search, and that's a big thing, right? So I work with a lot of clients who don't put any effort into SEO. They just buy their way to the top, pay to win. And that's a completely viable strategy. What I go for is I go for both. I do a combination of ads and SEO, and the combination together gives you cover all your bases. What I like to describe is that SEO, so PPC is instant gratification, whereas SEO is long-term investing. It takes time to implement SEO, it takes effort, but it's the gift that keeps on giving once you implement it correctly. Whereas PPC, you get it quick, but as soon as you turn it off, you stop generating revenue.
Just from maybe what you know on users, how likely are people to click on paid ads? Because I mean, personally, I've never even looked at that section.
I've been setting up my studio, and like I needed a lav mic, right? And what Google ads are getting sneaky. Like people don't see that this is an ad as much. They go, oh, cool, that's exactly what I want from this website. Take a lot, there's the price, click on that. That's a great ad. And that looks better than, you know, maybe some of these other results, which didn't actually give the product that I wanted. But Google knows that this is commercial intent, and it's going to serve this ad here before. So, but if I maybe append and modify my intent to, you know, buy lav mic, then we start to see the products, but they don't always show up correctly. And this is like, as an SEO person, I would go, oh, there's a nice opportunity here to optimize for this intent here, because I don't see a really easy way to buy this product from the first organic search results. So I'm always looking for opportunities when I want to launch a site. And so often when I buy, like I want to buy something and I search for it and I have a hard time, I always go and I go, oh, okay, this is something. And that's what I did with smart speakers. I wanted to buy a Google Home Mini 2 years ago. Couldn't find anybody really selling it well, or the results that did come up were really poor. So I thought, well, okay, cool. I want to test my luck. And, you know, if you say, you know, buy Google Home Mini, you know, first of all, you get these take a lot results, and there's smart speakers running an ad as well. Or there's the first search result. So, you know, it really depends on user perception. Right now, this looks a little bit better because you can already see the price straight away. It's one of the cheaper ones, but people might then go for the Gee Whiz one because it's $50 cheaper. And then but then what'll happen is they'll go to Gee Whiz and they'll see that Gee Whiz has got a really sketchy site. So they might click back and go shop around. And that's what you see with e-commerce, is that people shop around. But hopefully what you're seeing, so now Takealot has come into the game and has kind of got the authority, and they've got now the schema markup there for the reviews. But we still got the first result, and this first result, as we said, gets 30% of all the clicks. So it's likely that also if somebody's using a potential ad blocker, they might not see the ads. So again, you've got different things, and what you want to do is cover all your bases. How relevant are site keywords in modern SEO? Keywords are everything, in the sense of keywords are a relevancy factor. So you have to have the right relevant keywords in your content, but it's just one of 200 factors. So what you want to do is you want to have an exhaustive checklist, and you want to say, is my site relevant? Is my site secure? Is my site fast? Is my site indexable? Is it crawlable? Is it authoritative? And when you have all of those combinations, then you kind of climb the ranks. And sometimes you can get away with omitting certain things. And it also depends on the competitiveness, right? So if you're in a blue ocean and there's nobody competing, you can get away with like being really lazy and not including any keywords. Are there any resources that you have regarding metadata tags? Okay, so quick thing, metadata tags don't work. That's a deprecated thing. Keywords, when we talk about keywords, we're looking at the body of the copy. We're looking at the keywords in the title tag. We're looking at keywords in the URL. The meta description doesn't so much affect SEO rankings. What meta descriptions affect is user perception. So when you're scrolling in the search results and you read this meta description, this is when the keywords come into account, because they affect user click-through rate. What they don't affect so much is they don't affect the ranking potential. So if I go into this result here though, so this is what we say about keywords. So what we've done here to optimize this product is we've given this little section here. We've got a title tag here. We've got then now this additional information. Then we've got this description, and we've got this whole thing here. We've got the specs, which all have relevant keywords that are all related. We have got product features. We've got images. If you look at the images have the correct file names. So it's not just a JPEG is a DSG113.jpg. It's Google Home Mini charcoal.jpg. And that's where basically what you're doing is you're just giving clues. And what you're also got to be careful of is not to stuff. So what you don't want to do is just stuff keywords and go Google Mini, Google Mini, Google Mini a million times, because then you're going to get penalized for overuse and spamming the site. So general best advice is just make the page relevant to what a person would want to read, okay? Another thing that you can do, well, that's a weird thing. It's like, this is what happens when you give a site over there. They bungle the site and make the site look messy. The site was so beautiful when we handed it over. Here's a tool that we use. So like, for example, this is where you can go and you can get keywords. So hopefully this will work now. But say, for example, I want to go research a product, right? I want to sell something. So I want to sell boxing gloves, right? I can go here and I can pick a country and I can see all this data around these keywords. So when I create a page around boxing gloves, I want to ensure that I incorporate boxing gloves and maybe other relevant terms. So other niche related terms like Everlast boxing gloves, title boxing gloves, winning boxing gloves, and answering questions like how to clean boxing gloves. So maybe I'll have a blog and I'll write a guide or an article on how to clean boxing gloves, and then I'll link to my products, and that adds and transfers relevancy. So you can also transfer relevancy. So a really good way to think about it is this way. Imagine you've got a page and the page is about cars, right? Now, cars could be cars like a vehicle, an autonomous vehicle. Or it could be Cars, the Pixar movie, or it could be CARS, which is a human rights organization. So how does Google know what it's about? Well, it looks at the content and it goes and it sees like in the content, we've got IMDb and we talk about Pixar and we talk about maybe a couple of actors' names, we talk about animation. All of a sudden, Google goes, hold up, this isn't about Cars, the organization, or Cars, the automobile. It's about Cars, the movie. And because it uses all the relevant keywords surrounding your topic, it's got it like you've got a relational map of the keywords. It's able to understand what it's looking at. So basically just write good content, ensure you have relevant keywords, and yeah. Quick question. Do I regret selling smart speakers? No. I regret, no, I don't. Put it this way. The time investment that it took to run that store, I have made more money elsewhere and better use of my time. It was a great experiment. I learned a hell of a lot by implementing it, and I got a big payout. So I'm happy with that. And I get disappointed when I see them doing things to it that I go, ooh, why did you do this? You know, or they do bad things, because it's like my baby that but I've sent it off now. It's gone off. So what I have learned from it now, though, is that I want to replicate that model, and that's actually what I want to do more of. So in SEO, there's lots of ways to generate revenue, right? So one primary method is to be an agency and sell your services to clients for money, for time. But the problem with that is that you're selling your time, which is not scalable because you can only work a certain number of hours in the day. Another method you can make money with SEO is by something called an affiliate SEO. So if you go and you look at any blog or any website, if you want to read a review, that website is monetizing that site through affiliate commission. So I say like best smartphones 2020, right? This business is an SEO business. They make their money through SEO because they rank and get content, And then they make these like top 20 lists or top 10 smartphones. And then if you click on this link and you go and you buy that phone from Amazon, they get a cut. And that's a huge way and a really scalable way of making money through SEO. Another model, which is one that I'm looking to do now, which is the concept of flipping sites. So you go, you build a site, you see an opportunity, and you say, okay, cool, well, this site is generating 10,000 Rand a month in revenue. I buy the site and I build the site and I optimize it, and it starts generating 50,000 Rand a month because I'm getting all the traffic from SEO. And then I sell that site, and you can often sell a site for 30x of its monthly revenue. So if you have a site that's generating, 50,000 bucks, you can sell it for 30x. So you can sell it for like 1.5 mil to someone. And that's a big industry. People will buy sites that are generating revenue, whether it's through e-commerce or affiliates. That's a huge model. And that's something that we as an agency are going to try and shift more towards, is building our own sites and selling those, or flipping sites, because you tend to get you need to earn your chops by working with clients, but clients are difficult. And I want to move away from clients for a bit.
Just a question on your general payment structure with clients. Do you charge a certain fee for kind of, like pimping up a site for them with SEO? Or do you agree on some kind of cut share of all the increases they get? Because when you say that some of the clients, are getting 30 times, revenue increases within 6 months or whatever, it'd be lovely if you're capturing a portion of that proportional value.
Yeah, so that's something I regret. I regret not setting up performance-based agreements with some of my clients. So in some of the clients where I've grown their revenue from, 40,000 Rand a month to 2 million Rand a month, as a direct result of SEO, and I'm only getting 20,000 Rand a month for that, I regret being short-sighted. And that's something that we're going to experiment with, but it's a risk reward, right? Like the thing about SEO is that it's not guaranteed. Luckily, we've had very good success with all of our clients, and we're more keen to try being riskier with our clients, instead of taking less payment up front and getting performance-based rewards, which is what we're offering to a couple of our new clients that we're starting with now. And yeah, that's definitely something to do. So how is flipping done? Essentially, there are markets out there for buying sites. So there's like you'll find a broker. So either you do it's like selling a house, right? You have a website is an asset, it's a property, and it has a value. So you can sell that property and to a buyer. And so there are buyers out there. It's not really big in South Africa, but overseas in Europe and the States, it's huge. So you can check out a website like Empire Flippers, and they brokerage. So what you'll do is you'll list your site, you'll explain what the revenue is. They'll go through an auditing and a vetting process to ensure that it's actually a legitimate business. And it's like selling a business. It's like being acquired.
That's really cool. And then one last question I have on my side with regards to how you work with your clients in SEO. Do you start off with almost like a checklist? So you find out, what they've currently got and what they need based on the different factors.
Yeah, so that's been our primary bread and butter for the last couple of months. And it's actually something that we're transitioning to as an agency and launching a new product. So what we do is we have these comprehensive audits. And essentially, we break it up into 3 components that we measure: the technology, we measure the relevancy, and we measure the authority. And we have, within each of those, there are a whole bunch of checks and balances that we do. So we go through a site, we audit each check. We say, okay, cool, does your site have this? Does your site have that? How is this done? And then we grade it. And then if it's done well, we say, cool, you're doing this well, and why? If it's been done poorly, we give recommendations on how to correct it. And we sell that as a service. At the moment, we're selling that as like 25 grand per audit. But what we've realized is that in a South African market, that might seem expensive, but to overseas clients, that's nothing. Like audits, the level of audit that we perform normally sells for about 200,000 Rand overseas. So what we're going to be doing, and what's nice about the audits is that there's no back and forth. It's more of a product. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be launching a new website or a new brand that is focused almost exclusively on just conducting audits. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just outsource the implementation of the campaigns to preferred partners, so that we don't have to actually do the work and have it based on time. And then we'll get a kickback. So for example, I've got an agency. There was a client that I couldn't take on because it was just way too big for me. Even though the client wanted to work with our agency, I didn't feel comfortable taking on a project of that magnitude. So I referred it to a larger agency, and I get 10% every month for doing nothing. It's great. So yeah. Are we hiring? Okay, so we are hiring, but not for VAC work. And the reason for that is it takes a lot of time and investment to train and get somebody up to speed. And as a business, we want to train people that are going to stay. So we don't do part-time internships. We are doing full-time like jobs. So if you want a job, you can apply. But we're unfortunately not doing part-time internships just because we're at a point now that we're so busy that we can't invest in someone only for them to leave like 2 months later. Because it normally takes about 6 months for a person to really to get all, because there's so much to learn, there's so much to understand. So it takes about 6 months for somebody to really get on board and then become profitable. So we take that risk and we invest, we pay them, you know, but they don't provide a return on investment until later. So we unfortunately don't hire people for internships anymore.
What is the journey for somebody who wants to go into this line of work? I mean, as you know, people that study computer science are going to have no exposure at all to, you know, how SEO works and how as a developer, you know, as a full stack developer,
yeah,
can specialize in this line. So when you're like, you know, trying to hire somebody, how many years of experience you're looking for, and where do these your kind of hires usually come from?
So actually everybody at my agency, I think I've only got one guy who studied he did honors in computer science. Everybody else did something else. My business partner comes from finance. My one SEO analyst did economics. He's got a master's in economics. My other SEO person just did studied at marketing at Vega. And basically I've got one person who's a musician who transitioned into web design. So we don't, there is no set journey. What we do is we teach people by doing. So what happens is if you join as like an intern or a junior person, you join the team and you are assigned, we provide a lot of coursework. So I've got about 200,000 Rands worth of online courses and material that you have to do like on the side.
Felix, sorry to interrupt you here, but this is something I remember that you did at one stage. You used to basically pay your employees to take certain courses.
Yeah. So what we do is you start off on a really low base salary because you don't contribute anything. You're a potato. Or a sponge. You're a sponge. And so you start off as a sponge, and the more you absorb and the more you learn and the more you're able to do, you get compensated. So what we do is we have a 50% revenue share model with all of our employees. So if you do well and you put in the effort, you get a direct bonus based on your performance. So we pay you a lower base salary because you're not really contributing. And then as you contribute, and the faster you contribute, you get financially rewarded for that. And what we do is we kind of, if you start out, we'll give you kind of very specific manageable tasks. So we'll provide you with basic training on, okay, this is how you do this thing. And you do just that for like a while until you get it. And then we start giving you different parts, and you slowly grow in responsibility and capability until you become, what we consider somebody to be more senior. And then we start introducing you to clients, and we say, cool, here you go. Here's a project for you to handle by yourself. But we have as well, so our entire business, so maybe I can show you this, is based on Asana. So if this is like our team's workload. And then what we do is we have like templates for every project. So like, say we're going to be doing like an e-commerce website, or just a website, right? We have all of these tasks that are the common parts of building a site. And each of these tasks, for example, say, you're doing the server setup. It has like instructions on how to do that and checklists along the whole way. This is how we ensure like a quality standard. So you have to do this, you have to do that, whatever. And this whole process is kind of guided. So we've built these SOPs on, what needs to be done all along the way. You're given a loose like amount of time and a weight, and this all gets mapped onto like a timeline. So let me it's always out of, it's an old timeline, but essentially like, let me rather do this. So essentially your tasks get allocated onto a timeline. So you see all the things that you're doing, and they have progressions and dependencies, and your whole like process is guided along the way. So it's very hard to like not do things, and we have sanity checks and peer reviews, and we guide people along the way to ensure that, like things progress.
Awesome. It's been truly wonderful having you talk, Felix. So I'm going to put a link to a feedback form in the chat now, and hopefully people can give us some valuable input that can feed into our future events and feed into any talks Felix does in the future. But yeah, we really appreciate your time here today, and I'm sure we've all learned a lot. And if you have any links, like you mentioned, to Ecom Academy and to maybe other SEO resources, I'm happy to share them with people afterwards. And there's the talk you're doing.
If you want, I'm giving another like talk next week on Shopify versus Woocommerce. That's more of like a debate style thing. So if you want to sign up for that, you're more than welcome to join that. And then what I'll do is, as soon as we launch, so the course that we're launching is called Win with Woo, or Win with Woocommerce, and it's part of a series called Win With. So Win With X. We'll be launching those courses and basically divulging all the information that we've learned by running an agency and compressing that into something that's digestible, and that you can basically figure out how to win with WooCommerce and build an e-commerce store and use SEO, et cetera, and all the tricks that we learned along the way.
And at this debate, will the audience be voting at the end to see who?
I imagine so. So I hope you guys.
Then why don't you pay us or give us some discount codes to your course so that we can?
I'll be giving those discount codes regardless. Don't worry.
Okay, but we can boost you. We for a small fee we can boost you at the debate.
Don't stress. I'm going to win on merit, so it's all good.
All right. Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone for attending. I hope you guys enjoyed it.
So Win with Woo is only going to be, the site's going live in the next 2 weeks, but it's winwithwoo.com. At the moment, it's still just a placeholder site, but I'll drop a link when that's live.
Cool. Thank you, Felix, and thank you, everybody else. Have a good afternoon, guys.
All right. Cheers.
Cool. Martin and Jada Cock, thanks so much for setting everything up and attending. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Was it a fun talk?
Sure, yeah, I actually enjoyed it, and just like it just gave me an idea to do something.
Yeah, what's the idea? Or is this something to is it private information?
Kind of in a way, but yeah, something I want to do for like my website. That I was like sort of planning to do. I think like I'm just gonna add into it. Like it's not like a finalized thing, but it's like something that I was thinking of. Yeah, I think I'm gonna add to it.
Cool, man. Well, thanks for setting up the Zoom call. And yeah, once the recording's up, just let me know so that we can tell people that, you know, they can tune into that from the group.
All right, cool.
Okay. Cheers, Martin. And don't forget to give your own feedback in the feedback form.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I'm
Bye,
gonna
man.
do that now. Cool. Great.